Greetings, beloved Princeton United Methodist Church community. This is Pastor Jenny with another video update for you. I'm reading today from James chapter 2, verse 8. Here's what it says. You do well if you really fulfill the royal law according to the scripture. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. But if you show partiality, you commit sin and are convicted by the law as transgressors. This is the word of life. Thanks be to God. So you might want to go and look at the rest of this part of the chapter, this first part of the chapter 2 of James, because it says a lot more. There are so many little rich passages here, but none of them say exactly the whole that I wanted to talk about today. But we are still in the book of James. We were there this past Sunday as well. And James can be a harsh book. There are some strong feelings that come through in the book of James that can feel very judgmental, very strict. And while that can be very challenging, it's also, I think, really important for us to listen and to let ourselves sit with some of these things, even if they kind of push against us or we want to push back against them, at least so that we can just understand better the conviction and the passion that comes through in the book of James. And I think what the book of James is trying to do is it's trying to help us, human beings who say that we are followers of Jesus Christ, be better followers of Jesus Christ and be more whole and integrated people. People whose insides match our outsides, people whose faith beliefs, our stated beliefs, our understood beliefs match the things that we do, our actions and our attitudes and our words on the outside. So this passage is really talking about these places that we continuing to talk about hypocrisy and the ways that our insides and our outsides don't match up, that we lack integrity, and that we could stand some time to go a little deeper in our faith. So I wonder, as we think about this today, this week, what some of those boundaries are that you find yourself putting up when it comes to your faith. Things like, Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself, or love your enemy. And I can go so far in that, but not here. I can't go past that. I can't love this enemy, or I can't love this person, or when Jesus or the 10 Commandments say, thou shalt not commit adultery, or thou shalt not murder. This is part of that passage too. I can understand that to this point, but here's where I might make an exception, or here's where I start separating out the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. Now, we know that Jesus did a lot of that too, right? Trying to find the spirit of the law, kind of pushing up against people who had been so clear about the letter of the law that they had lost the spirit, inviting them into a deeper, more rich, more free spirituality and life and faith. And so it's not that we're trying to go the other way. It's not that we're trying to just be strict, but more trying to listen to the deeper invitations to a deeper, more true self, more true faith, so that we can actually be more free, so that we can actually be the fullness of what God intended for us as a world, as a whole universe, and also as us as individuals as well. So again, the question is, where do these limits, where do we put our own limits? Where do we bump up against the edges of our faith, the edges of our ethics, the edges of our action connected to our faith? Where do you find yourself going, I can go this far, but I can't go this far? And again, without judgment, I invite you just to notice, just to pay attention, and to let yourself think and pray and study a little bit more and converse a little bit with people around you who might be on a similar journey, or who might have been on this journey and and can help you on yours too. Where are the limits, the boundaries of your faith? where do you struggle to hear God's deeper invitations more and more fully so that we might be more whole people? So we're going to keep talking about the book of James this week, and then we're actually going to start a new worship series on the 12th, which is also our kickoff Sunday. And remember that, as you know, I don't have to tell you, but kickoff Sunday is different for us this year because the world is still different this year. But it's a little more of a kickoff Sunday than we had last year. But one of the things that I just want to continue to help us all remember is that even with the restrictions, even with the things that aren't the way we want them to be, we're here for you as a church. And so if you feel strongly about coming to church in person and want to come, we welcome you there. If you feel strongly about being in at home or away from our actual church building or a crowd of people, then we are here for you for that too. That is all good. And I know that our needs and circumstances and how we feel about things, it runs the gamut. You can think of one situation and there's somebody in our congregation, our church, that feels that way. Any number of things. And so I just continue to ask compassion and care for one another, and a realization that we need different things, we feel different ways, and we are continuing to be online and in person for you to worship, to get back in the swing of things, especially after summer, which we actually did get to go, some of us, some places, and to have a semi-normal summer this time. So our music and our children's and our youth ministry and our adult small groups start up again, starting around the 12th. So I invite you to find ways to be connected again. We are still planning a cookout of some sort, a gathering on the 19th. Watch out for more details there, because we're still trying to navigate what's the safest, best way to still be together in person, the ways that we've missed being together. And then on the 26th, we start some newcomer groups and lots of good things coming up. I know that one of the things we've been doing here is, over the past couple weeks, is talking more about the partnership that we have been establishing and working to establish with Kingston United Methodist Church. And last week, we talked about how these two churches coming together actually form something new. And as a not very good name placeholder, we're calling that the Capital District Multi-Site Ministry. So this week, the question that I wanted to try to address is why? Why did this come about? And whose idea was this? So first it was Hector. Hector Burgos is our district superintendent, though he's not making this up completely out of the blue. So multi-site ministries are not new, and they're not terribly uncommon, but they're probably less common in the United Methodist world. In fact, there is not another one in the Greater New Jersey Annual Conference. We're the first one that's kind of experimenting and launching to see if this could be a viable model for other churches in the area as well. But I have been in conversation with other United Methodist churches who are doing multi-site ministry, and so know that we're not making it all up completely from scratch. But this arose from several different things. And I will also say that this is not the first time I've thought about this either. This is something that I've been thinking about for probably a good 10 years or so, because one of the reasons that it's a good thing to think about is that most of our churches, even though we are a connectional denomination, meaning that the opposite of that is congregational. In a congregational church, every church self-governs. In the United Methodist Church, we are a connectional church, so we have a common governance, which, we have a bishop, and we have an annual conference, and we have a global general conference, as well as a number of other layers there in between. But we are connected, and that's part of the itinerant system. Our pastors move around, and there are ways that we are connected. But even so, our churches tend to operate in silos. We operate parallel to one another. We replicate all the same things, sometimes well, most of the time not as well as we should. And we spread our resources really thin, hoping that every church can kind of do wonderful, thriving, vital ministry, but without really sharing a lot of that. So that's one reality, and that's been around a long time, and that's been on my mind for a long time. But there's some other things that have more recently happened. One is that the state of our United Methodist Church is changing. There are a lot of things that are changing. If you've been around for a little while, you know that the General Conference of the global body of our United Methodist Church has been on the precipice of some major decisions and possibly a split that could come around issues around human sexuality and inclusiveness. And so that's one piece, but there are also other things that have happened, again, kind of around resources and a changing landscape of things in the United Methodist and this particularly the Greater New Jersey Annual Conference area. And that is that some of the, there was a financial challenge that has happened at the conference level, that where some mistakes were made and there's not as much money as we thought there was, and that is creating a different set of problems that we have to sort of work through and challenges that we have to creatively find and adapt for. So the whole conference is going around some different kinds of obstacles there. Back to that general conference thing, there's an important thing that I forgot to say, is that not only is that potential split happening, but the delay of general conference because of COVID has also meant that bishops are sharing, like taking on multiple Episcopal areas, covering for other bishops who have retired. And so something similar is also happening with our district superintendents in our conference, where fewer district superintendents are covering the same number of churches. And there's just this kind of shift that's happening with resources all around. The third major thing is COVID itself. And so COVID, as you know, you're feeling the impacts of this. It is fundamentally changing the way church and the world operate. But we live in the church world, I live in the church world, so we're having to figure out new things, and we're still in the middle of this very adaptive reality that we're having to figure out new ways to do church and to do ministry. And so it also leaves us open and ripe for trying things out, experimenting, innovating. And it's really, we believe, that it's going to be those churches that are adaptive and innovative that are going to survive through all these things that I just named. There will be church. There already are churches that have closed, and there are more that will come because they don't have some of the strength and the leadership and the resources to move through. So, Hector, District Superintendent Hector, came to me a few months ago with this proposal, and it was also very particular to our geographic, very local geographic area, namely with Kingston, because there were some challenges there finding leadership for them that he was faced with, and he wanted to find a creative way to keep the creative, innovative work ministry that Kingston has been doing, but in a not sustainable way. How can we do this in a way that can make it sustainable? And so that was kind of the origin of some of this. Now, I know that one of the questions that you have in your mind is going to be, who's paying for this, and what is the cost to Princeton as this comes about? So that's what I'm going to talk about next week. So, keep asking your questions. We love to hear about them. I know these are long answers. There is a lot to say about this, but thank you for listening and for keeping up and for investing. Remember that you are enough because God is enough. Thanks be to God. Amen.